I just turned Fortnite, a bright and colorful shooter game, into a dark and terrifying game. What you see here is all footage from inside of my Fortnite game, and it honestly looks nothing like the game at all. To make a game feel truly terrifying, it's not all about the atmosphere. There needs to be gameplay for the player to feel immersed, and horror games seem to choose between either one. The game could be Five Nights at Freddy's or this. On January 9th, 2025, I got an ominous DM on Discord. Are you down to do a Fortnite map based on my horror game? I made a few horror maps on Fortnite in my time, but they all took me like 3 months to make. So I wasn't really jumping out of my skin to make another one. But horror maps in Fortnite felt just like giant walking through haunted house simulators. Yeah, they're creepy, but where's the gameplay? What I'm seeing is scary, but what I'm doing has nothing to do on why I feel scared. If the game I was offered to make piqued my interest, then I would agree to make the game. What's the horror game I was offered to make inside Fortnite? The Obsessive Shadow is a VR-based horror game where a tall, shadowy creature is trying to break into your house and do unspeakable acts to a child. That was probably not the best summary. There is an objective for each hour that you survive. And the objectives include shining a flashlight at the windows until the monster goes away, shining a flashlight at furniture objects that the shadow covers, turning off electronic devices that randomly turn on, and a final objective that I decided to change from the original game, and I'll talk about why later. The game is created by Pablo Heckman, or Expodev, who in the past actually made the main menu theme song for my horror map where you hold your pee. My first playthrough is what convinced me to take the offer. It's not the story, it's not the cute characters, even though the character is pretty cute, but it's the gameplay with the audio. That is what put chills down my spine. So me and the creator virtually dapped up as an official agreement, and I needed to make the house the game takes place in. And boom! The house is now complete. Okay, it was actually almost that simple, as he did send me the entire level of the actual game, which he made almost drag and drop with just a few adjustments. Unfortunately, the default Fortnite lighting is not doing the house much justice. So let's consume the map with a giant black hole and manually add the lighting myself. What an improvement. A flashlight with a draining battery is a core gameplay mechanic. So I temporarily used the Fortnite flashlight, and I added a custom light since the Fortnite flashlight's light looks really ugly. It's like this putrid orange. The objective I worked on first is one where you shine a flashlight at a shadow object, which shakes and then goes back to normal after a few seconds of shining the light on it. Kinda like Spider-Man getting rid of the black symbiote. This involved some math, which is probably the scariest part of the map so far. All this does is it detects if the player's looking at the object, but it's cool to show some of the behind the scenes what's actually happening. For the objective the player completes first, the player shines their light at the monster depending on which window it's currently at. This works very similar to the last objective, as I just need to know if the flashlight is on and the player is looking at the monster. So the less work I do, the better for my sanity. Let's get the star of the show in the map, Lanky. Yeah, that's what they decided to call this tall creature. I wonder why. I was given the monster model and animations from Expodev, so all I had to do is add all the different animations to each window. With the window objective pretty much done, the shining your flashlight at the object objective was the next one to be implemented inside of the map itself. When the object is active, I wanted that kind of black symbiote texture to be applied, so I can make it feel more alive and animated. So I went ahead and adjusted the texture to make it look more like it's flowing as well as reflective, so when you shine the light in the darkness, it's easier to see even when it's really dark. What I didn't expect was me accidentally making a version of the texture where when you apply it to an object, it looks like it's ripping the object apart. And this genuinely looked like Spider-Man from Spider-Man 3, where he was on top of the bell tower and just ripping the symbiote off of him. And it basically represented the shadow being ripped off from the object when you shine the light. So I added that to when the object is shaking. There's another threat that lurks during these objectives. That's the lanky creature itself. At random intervals, the creature will spawn behind or in front of you, where the player either needs to not move or they need to turn around. It was pretty simple to make it work since you just need to detect how much the player moves their camera by. The issue with this is, how will the player clearly know what to do? Just because the creature spawns in front of you doesn't mean they know they need to turn around. My solution was to just tell the player what to do. Put big fat text on the screen that says don't move or turn around. It really can't get any clearer than that. But the aura, there's none of it. But then I figured out there's actually a way to have animated textures inside of the game. How about adding custom text that has a scary font that moves to kind of give that spooky atmosphere? There is a flipbook functionality, which allows you to create a grid of frames you want to animate, kind of like Flipnote Studio from the DS. To see if this works properly, I tried getting this fish stick GIF inside of the game, and it looks glorious. I went into Photoshop, found a scary font, I typed the text, stretched and squished the text a few times, and with the 4 different versions I made, I put them into a flipbook, and it came out way better than I could imagine. Now the boring text finally has some character. Isn't this a horror map? I knew I was missing something. If you do move or don't turn around when the monster spawns on you, you will get a jump scare and the hour will reset. So I created a black box, added the jump scare animation, and added the audio to the map, with this as the result. The next objective is quite simple. Turn off 3 electronic devices, and if 3 of those devices are on at the same time for too long, you lose. Due to my stubbornness, I spent way too much time making this as high quality as possible. In Fortnite, the button device is how everyone makes an item interactable for something to happen. But the text just looks so plain and boring to me. I want cool custom text, kind of like how my don't move text was. Forget buttons. When the player walks in this giant zone where the device is active, custom animated text pops up, and when the player presses their interact button, the device turns off. So yes, I did spend a lot of extra time to achieve the same exact result, but it just looks so much cooler. There is one more objective to make. Before I did that, I wanted to connect each objective to make the map playable from start to finish, mainly for testing purposes, as well as updating some of the features I was testing earlier. The way each of these objectives transition into each other is through a phone call after each objective is complete, similar to how the phone guy is in the Five Nights at Freddy's games. To start the objective, if you interact with the phone, a phone will appear by the player's head. While it's not important to have that, small details like these just make the map come alive and feel less like Fortnite. Since I absolutely despise the Fortnite flashlight, I replaced it with a custom model of a flashlight that is attached near the player's head as well. And it just looks so much better. There's just one more problem with the flashlight, the battery level. Right now, I have text on the screen that just stands out way too much. So I added a meter that visually shows the player how much battery they have left. That also has this cool animation letting the player know they are low on battery. If you turn off your flashlight, you might notice something. It's really dark, like really dark, especially when you don't have the flashlight yet in the intro of the map. So to make it not look as bad, I added a personal light of sorts, which only works when the player is close to the wall, so they aren't completely blind. Time for the final objective. Since ExpoDev and I wanted to have an objective different from the original game, this was my own creation. The creature doesn't like the light. How about you can hurt it by turning on the lights? In certain rooms, the light will be flickering, and in that room, there's going to be a light switch you need to turn on. And when you do, the creature will appear, do an animation, and scream to show that it's being hurt. Which makes sense to me as a final battle of sorts. And I really love this feature I added to let the player know the light switch is something that they can actually interact with. I made a material that glows white based on how far the player is from that light switch, which should make it a lot more obvious what you can interact with without telling the player, click me, I'm right here, I'm the thing you can click on. And this works extremely well with the map since it's dark for pretty much 90% of the game. While the phone call gives information about how to survive the hour, I wanted a clear and obvious way to give instructions to the player. Since the original game is in virtual reality, ExpoDev added floating text around the player's face in the original game explaining what to do. I thought that looked really dope, so I added something very similar after each phone call. With the main part of the game done, it's time to beta test. I can get feedback on what needs to be changed or needs to be added in order for the gameplay to feel better. And I had a few friends test out the map. Here is one of my favorite reactions. reactions.
That's a good jump scare.
Everyone loved it, except for this loser. The best set of feedback I got was from Stupid Waluigi, the talented 3D artist who created the thumbnails for my past Fortnite maps. He felt the intro of the map, which is just waiting for the TV to finish its Amber Alert, was just not enough to be familiar with the house that you spend pretty much the entire game inside of when it becomes dark. He suggested an extended intro that forces the player to explore the house, which I really liked that idea. Another idea was to add a small sprint feature, as he quoted what Gabe Newell, the creator of Valve, said: "If I can't sprint, and I think I should be able to sprint, the game is Okay, he didn't say that, but it's true. With the sense of constant urgency in the map, disabling sprint really feels restrictive, so I added that feature. Oh, and they found some pretty glaring bugs. I created the extended intro, which has the player turn a radio off upstairs, picking up a plant and placing it down, and then turning on the TV. Yeah, it's pretty simple, but it quickly allows the player to familiarize themselves with the play space. ExpoDev told me he wanted to be the person on the phone. Why not?
Hey, I'm your neighbor from across the street, and something is very wrong here.
And honestly, he did an amazing job for the map. On top of that, I added subtitles to make it clear as day what he's saying on the phone. Every horror game needs an ending, even if it's just an image of a check for $120.50. When the lights turn back on, the door will start knocking, and, well, you gotta play the map yourself to experience the ending. I added the credits in this cool cinematic shot. If you skip the credits, I don't like you. There's one last thing: multiplayer. When you or your friends get jump scared, instead of restarting the whole map, which would really suck, I want them to spectate the other players. If you saw my last video about making Call of Duty Zombies in Fortnite, you know spectating in Fortnite is horrendous. I decided to make my own spectating feature. When a player dies, they go into security cameras and they can flick through the many different rooms and find their friends that are still playing in the map. It's really one of my favorite additions to the map. For a finishing touch, I added a bunch of pictures to the frames in the map, like one of my cat and of ExpoDev's dogs. I also got Stupid Waluigi and the homie Danny Gonzalez to make their own pieces of art. And the map is now complete. Before the map is uploaded, we need a thumbnail. I told Stupid Waluigi I wanted the lanky shadow monster to be peering through the window with room on the left for the name of the map. And after a few hours, this masterpiece was crafted. No joke, this is the best thumbnail yet. It looks like a movie poster. It's crazy. Time to publish the map. Fortnite has a moderation team that looks at maps to see if they break the rules. They don't really like me. For my last map, they thought this was too scary. They also thought I was breaking someone's copyright with the image they provided. These are just the default Fortnite zombies that everybody has access to. I truly think my cat could do a better job. And thankfully for today, the moderation team was in a good mood, and the map is now published and can be played. Go ahead and check the map out with the code above or in the description. Or you can search up my username in the Fortnite search bar and find the map there if they don't delete it because it's just that cool of a map. Now, if you would excuse me, I just found the scariest game of all time. It's called Getting a Job. I know I just scared some of you.